evening's discussion will focus on the topic of blacks in ancient Asia and especially China and Southeast Asia. When you talk about African people in East Asia, which is the title we usually give to China and Southeast Asia, what we find is that this is a very interesting phenomenon. Many people assume that African people only went into Asia 60,000 years ago during the expansion of the first black people out of Africa. But what happened is that there were several migrations out of Africa. In ancient times throughout Africa and Asia, numerous ancient black civilizations once flourished. Over the last 50 years, many anthropologists and historians and linguists have discovered many cultural and linguistic affinities between blacks or Negroes of Africa, or the Africoid type, which is described in the literature as the brown race, the Hamitic, the Negro, or the Mediterranean race. And Asian blacks are often, instead of being called Negro, they're often called the Oceanic type, which suggests a common origin for these cultures. As a result of science, we know that mankind originated in Africa thousands of years ago. It was deeply pigmented or black skin. The yellows or Mongoloid people appear around 25,000 BC. It seems that among some of the upper Paleolithic black populations that migrated to Europe and towards the Baltic Sea during the Ice Age, a definite biological change took place, leading to the appearance of the Alpine or Nordic white types around 10,000 to 15,000 BC. Today, science can rely on irrefutable material evidence to illustrate these facts. But although I assume that Europeans or whites were around at this early period, what we find is that the earliest skeletons of Europeans does not appear until around 2000, according to Dr. Antadia. Although these races appeared at an early date in Europe, the Aryan or whites, those people who lack pigment, appear in historic records and graphics, picture illustrations suddenly around 1500 BC with a branch invading India and other groups progressively occupying the Asia Minor. What we find is that many of the black people who expanded to East Asia and Indochina, these black people were part of the Proto-Saharan people. We find in a sense that these black people, when they went to China, they took with them red and black pottery. Many of the symbols on this ware are analogous to signs that we find in ancient Africa. This pottery is found in China at Yangshao, Niaoti. And these signs are very interesting because they show, in a sense, that these people were basically African people. The earliest civilizations in China, the Shang and the Xia dynasty, were founded by Proto-Dravidian-speaking people and the Manding Kushites. As I've noted in earlier lectures, the Dravidian-speaking people and the Manding-speaking people of West Africa formerly lived in the Proto-Sahara. As the Sahara began to dry up, these people, in a sense, migrated out of the Sahara to various parts of the world. It's interesting because these people are known to us as the Kushites. The founder of the Xia dynasty was called King Yue. He was a member of the so-called Yue tribe. Yue was the regulator of the waters and the builder of canals. The totem of the Yue people was a bird. His son Pa was the founder of China's megalithic culture. Yue seems to have been a Balawiya, the Lord of the Flood, since the title is expressive of Yue's skill in controlling the floods and in storing water for agricultural purposes. Sometimes these Yue people were also called Yakshas, but among most of the ancient people, they were known as the Kushites. The first dynasty of China was Xia. The Xia civilization of ancient China lasted from 2205 BC to 1766 BC. According to one of the Chinese books called the Guban Zhushu Nian, the Shia dynasty from Yue had 17 kings and lasted 471 years. Archaeologists believe that the major Shia sites are located in the Shaanxi and Henan provinces of China. According to a great archaeologist that formerly taught at Yale University named Dr. Chan, he's dead today. But what he did is that he did a lot of fantastic research in relationship to the ancient Chinese and their archaeology. He found that the Xia civilization was probably situated in the Yehe and Yuhe river valleys and along the Yingge and Ruhe rivers. The capital of Xia was located in the Songshan Mountains. Mountains frequently come up in ancient history because, as I told you formerly when I talked about the Proto-Saharans, that the Proto-Saharans first lived high in the mountains. And we find that many of the histories of people like the Europeans, who say they came from the Caucasus Mountains, and even the ancient Chinese, they claim that they came from Jiangxi and other mountains. And so we find, in a sense, that sometimes ancient people live in the mountains, and then after a while, after tectonic catastrophes, these people move out of the mountains and into the valleys. The Chinese origin of the Xia go back to what's called the Longshan period in China. During the Longshan period, burial goods included a large number of weapons, including stone, lace heads, and arrows. This suggests that intercultural conflict was at its height during the Longshan periods, and warfare may have played a role in the rise of Xia. The Longshan Neolithic, and when we talk about Neolithic, this is a new age. It's the age when people used agriculture. They cultivated plants. They also raised cattle, or they domesticated sheep. But during this period, we find, in a sense, that the blacks in China, who belonged to the Longshan Neolithic, they made pottery using a wheel. They worked with bronze. And they even had wheeled vehicles, because the interesting thing about the Xia and the Shang is that the Xia, which was the first dynasty of China, they had a lot of chariots, and they also had riding. And when you study some of their graves, you find that the grave goods were very rich, and there was a lot of important material found in these graves that show that the Xia people were very rich. The Chinese histories tell us much about Xia. According to the Chinese tradition, the Xia built their settlements near rivers, lakes, and streams. As a result, we find that the Xia, like many of the early Proto-Saharan people or Kushites who expanded into Asia and Europe, they usually, in a sense, lived near rivers, even the Olmecs in ancient America. And the reason they lived near rivers is that these rivers provided an easy way for them to communicate. In other words, the people who lived along these the banks of these rivers could communicate by taking a boat. So that was important. The Chinese also, in a sense, histories let us know that the ancient Chinese were called Li Min. Li means black, Min means people. Many European scholars, they translate Li Min as the black-headed people, as the blackheads. But that's not what it really means. Li means black and Min means people, but they like to translate it as Li Min to confuse people who read the material and say, this is just another Chinese people. No, they were not. These were African or black people. Xia social organization and life was based on the clan. The totals of the major Xia clans were aquatic animals: the fish, the tortoise, the turtle, and etc. This view is supported by the myth recorded in the Annals of the Bamboo Books. The Annals of the Bamboo Books is one of the most ancient books that the Chinese wrote, and this book that was written by the Chinese tells us much about the ancient history, and that's what we're really trying to look at, is this ancient history of these people. We find, in a sense, that according to the Bamboo Books, it's claimed that Yu's mother swallowed a spirit pearl before the birth of Di. Di in Chinese means Lord, or Di Yue. Di Yue was the founder of the Xia dynasty. Moreover, the dragon motif is common at Shia sites. A pan vessel was found at Taosi with a red painted dragon motif. The Chinese histories make it clear that the Shia had writing and tortoise books. This view can be supported by the pottery marks on the Longshan and early Tu pottery. Longshan, as I mentioned earlier, was an archaeological site where we find the roots of the Shia and other Chinese civilizations. Early Tu is also a site where archaeologists have found a tremendous amount of material that allows us to be able to see what their culture was like. At Early Tu, the pottery is often inscribed with various signs and symbols. Fish were incised on a piece of bone, but up to now, oracle bone inscriptions have not been found. As I told you in earlier lectures, many of the Kushites, the ancient Proto-Saharans, belonged to the Ma Confederation, or the Fish Confederation. So naturally, given this fact that they were, or considered the fish to be a symbol of their civilization, naturally they would have fish on many of the artifacts. I think that one of the reasons that that the fish was such an important creature in their mythology and also in their civilization was the fact that many of the people who left the Proto-Sahara and settled in China, they had lived through a period where there was an immense floods, a lot of rain, and so then they recognized in the sense that those people who were most successful were people who were able to act like fish. You know, and now what do fish do? Fish are able to swim, fish are able to survive, and I think that many of the leaders back then who became very successful were people who were able, in a sense, to build canals. They were engineers who knew how, in a sense, to construct structures that allowed people to be able to withstand the threat of floods. Okay. Today's archaeologists believe that the early Tu culture is the Xia dynasty. This is supported by the fact that the local texts of China place Xia in Henan and southern Shaanxi provinces. These Chinese provinces are main areas where early Tu artifacts have been discovered. Chinese archaeologists have suggested the Henan Lungshan culture and the early Tu periods 1 and 3 are representatives of the Xia dynasty. Xia is considered the first dynasty of the San De. In Chinese, the word San De means the three dynasties. The San De, or three dynasties of ancient China, are the Xia, the Shang, and the Zhao. There are many references to the Xia people. The Xia people were recognized as Westerners because they settled in the Middle Yao River region of China. As a result, they were called Hua Xia, the Middle States people. It's very important in a sense to remember that although many Chinese nationalists today try to make it appear as though the Chinese are related to the Xia and the Shang people, if you really read the Chinese text, and this is why it's important to study languages, if you really read the Chinese texts make it clear that the Xia people came, you know, from the West. They came. They didn't just originate in China. They were Westerners, or you know, they came from the area of Iran and other places. There are numerous references to Xia. Han Feizu, writing in the 3rd century BC, in his Chik Wao, observed that Yue made the Riku vessels painting the interior black and the exterior in red. Remember, as I told you before, a common sign for these ancient Kushites, even when you look at the ancient pottery of Egypt, is the black and red pottery. And you can see that Yue, who was one of the first rulers of China, also made pottery with a black exterior and with a black and red. The tradition recorded by Han of the black and red ware for the Xia, Li Nin, suggests some relationship of Xia to the Yang Shao culture, which also used black and red ware and analogous pottery signs. Chang believes that the legendary sages and heroes of China probably lived during the Lungshan culture period. The Lungshan culture had walled cities and evidence of rank and rituals. This clearly illustrates how archaeology can complement textual history. The artifacts of early Tu include black and red ware, red, black, and buff pottery. These artifacts were made of stone, shell, and bronze. The bronze instruments found by archaeologists at early Tu sites corresponds to the descriptions by Yuan Kang. And Yuan Kang, he wrote a book that's called Yu Shu. And he's quoting the philosopher Feng Hu, of the tools of the Xie. Yuan Kang wrote, in the age of Yue, weapons were made of bronze for building canals and houses. Again, we come back to this whole idea that much of ancient China at the time that the Kushites became the settled area must have been kind of a floodplain, a flood zone, because there's this constant mention of the Xie rulers building these canals, finding a way, in a sense, to control the water so that people could have a nice place to stay without the threat of high floods. The black and red ware coming to the Fertile African Crescent was also used in China. The affinity between the black and red ware from Nubia and the pottery from Yangzhou sites in the Henan and Gansu provinces of China. The textual history of Xie is synthesized in the Chinese book Xi Jie. This evidence from the Xi Jie was used by Su Huxian of the Chinese Institute of Archaeology to find ruins. Ruins in Chinese are called Shu, or the Shu ruins of Xie. Su Huxian, using this source, hypothesized that the center for a tradition of Xie dynasty towns was the Luo Yang Plain and the Ding River Valley. This coincides with the early two sites of this area, which date between 2100 to 1800 BC. The Xie people were recognized as being different people from the Mongoloid Chinese that politically dominate China today. As a people, they came from the west, i.e. Iran, before they settled the Middle Yellow River. The Zhao, which is one of the third great dynasty of China, one of the Zhao, they had a saying in their books that the ritual rules of the three dynasties, Sendai, are one. The early Xie lived on mounds and houses made of grass and mud. Pounded earth walls surrounded Xie villages to protect the Li men, or black people, from attack. The Xie probably spoke a Manding language. This view is supported by the fact that I've done a lot of translation of some of the Xie texts, and what I found is that many of the words in these Xie texts relate to the Manding language spoken in West Africa today. The major clan totem of the Xie, as mentioned earlier, was the dragon. In Chinese, the word for clan is Zu or Su. And this was the basic social unit of organization for the Li Men people. In China, the dragon was regarded as the deified serpent. It also denoted the symbol of the perfect man, the son of heaven, the emperor. And again, remember when I talked about earlier the fact that the Kushite people claimed that they came from the great Ma, or the great fish. And so we see in a sense that they transferred this whole idea of the great amphibian creature to the Chinese mythology, but only instead of, in a sense, this great fish became a dragon. The clan emblem for the ancient Manding was the first lizard dragon. A dragon is nothing more than a giant lizard, just like in, if you study some of the Manding clans in West Africa, you see that the lizard is their symbol. And what is a dragon? Nothing more than a big lizard. This dragon motif was also found in Iran and Babylonia civilization, and a Nao civilization in Russia, which had similar painted pottery to the pottery styles of Henan, which was Xie. The Xie Li men built their settlements near rivers, lakes, and streams. They are mentioned in the Oracle Bone writings. The sacred tree of the Xie was the pine. The Xie naming system was the same as that used by the Shang. The founder of the Xie dynasty was Yue. His father was Gung. Myths about Gung found throughout southwest Shaanxi. Yue's son founded the Pa culture. The Pa culture was a megalithic culture. Great Yue was the regulator of the waters and builder of canals. He invented wet-field agriculture. Yue was born in Xikniu. His mother was Suaji. She is alleged to have become pregnant and swallowed a spirit's pearl. Under the orders of Emperor Shun, Yue was to dredge the Yellow River. Yue traveled the empire for 10 years, draining the land of water. One tradition claims that, but for Yue, we should have all been fishers. Again, as I told you earlier, you see this relationship between these early engineers who had a great deal of knowledge about controlling water. And again, this comes from their experiences in Africa, because at that time, before the Kushites left Africa, it was a much more wetter place. We find all these rivers in Africa. So when the Kushites came to China, they knew a lot about controlling, areas that involved water. The Xia, the political unit of the Xia dynasty, was in a sense the walled city. The walled cities of the Xia was called Yi. And these Yi were small cities that were organized in what we call guao, or states. Each guao was known as a shi. The administrator of the guao was a member of an agnatic clan, or shi. The shi ruled over members of their own clan and non-related clans living in various yi, forming the guao. Emperor Shu appears to have given his son the principality of Shang, and Yue the principality of Xia. After the death of great Shu, Yue became, in a sense, the leader of the dynasty. It's important, in a sense, to understand that when we think about the earlier civilization in China, the first ruler of China was called Huang Di. Huang Di. But when you break down Huang Di, you really get Huang Kuta. So again, we see mention of the Kuta clan, and the Kuta clan, as I told you last week, played an important role in the founding of the Elamite civilization, and we also see mention, or find mention, of the Kuta clan in relation to the rise of the Chinese civilization. The Xia dynasty remained strong until along came a ruler called Jie. Jie came to power in 1766 BC, and Jie was deposed and exiled by Zheng Dang. And Zheng Dang was a ruler of Shang. There are 30 references to the capital of Xia in the Zhou, Jie, Guayu, and the Guban Shu Jie, Nian. The Luoyang Plain in central Henan, especially the region of Dingfeng and Yuxie, in the upper Ying River Valley, and the area needing the Fenhe River Valley in southwest Shaanxi, south of Mount Wu, was usually mentioned in the narratives. Okay, so to summarize things, that the Xia people were, in a sense, Mandarin speakers. The Xia civilization was the first civilization in China. The Xia civilization was, in a sense, founded by Mandarin-speaking people, and these Mandarin-speaking people, in a sense, came to the area with, in a sense, bows. It's very important to understand that Yue, which was, in a sense, the tribe that the Xia belonged to, was just another name for Kushana. So when you really, in a sense, try to research some of these ancient Chinese civilizations, you have to remember, in a sense, that we're talking about people who were called Kushana or Yue. The original Shang also came from the west. The Chinese point to the Kunlun Mountains as a source for the Shang. This is interesting because Kunlun was a general term used up to the Dong dynasty for Asiatic and African blacks. This will explain the name Li Jiang. Li Jiang, in a sense, meant the black Jiang. So I guess there must have been, in a sense, Mongoloid Jiang. The Zhao called the Shang Li Men, or black people. The Zhao were the first Hua, or hand rulers of China. Hua is the name, in a sense, which can, in a sense, mean middle people, but Hua is the name that is usually given to the first Chinese who came to China and took over China away from the black people. So Hua, in a sense, is the name given to these Mongoloid people. There also, in a sense, another word for them later was the Han. In the Zhao Li, which is one of the Zhao books, the Zhao claimed that the Shang had black and oily skin. The Negroid origin of the Shang is reported by the Zhao bronze inscription, which observes that King Wu, son of King Wen, conquered Shang on the morning of the day Jiazi, having seized the Shang Ding cauldrons and vanquished the dark Shang king. In the Shang poem, Xiao Niu, we read that heaven bade the dark bird to come down and bear Shang. According to the book Yin Ben Ji, the founding ancestor of Shang was Jie, a member of the Zhou clan. Here we read that Yan Jie. His mother was Qian Ti, a daughter of Jun Shi. Three persons went to take a bath. They saw that a black bird dropped an egg. Qian Ti took and devoured it, became impregnated, and gave birth to Xie. Xie grew up and assisted Yue, the founder of Xie, in his work to control the flood with success. So again, we see in a sense that that in terms of how we see the rise of the Shang dynasty, we see that the Shang dynasty rose because of the fact that there was a mating between one of the earliest Shang rulers. The use of the black bird for the founder of Shang may mean that it was a totem of one of the proto-black tribes of southern China. Xin Ti was probably a Yi girl, thus the name Yin Shang for the Shang dynasty, who married a royal member of the Black Bird or Yue clan. The study of crania from Yin and Yang indicates that the two main racial groups in the late Shang period were Negroes and classical Mongoloids. It's very important to understand in the sense that when you talk about Shang, there was not just one Shang civilization. There was two Shang civilizations. The first Shang civilization was founded by Dravidian-speaking people, and the second Shang civilization was founded by what we would call the classical Mongoloid people. The classical Mongoloid people are people in the sense who presently live in the Philippines, or you find them in Indonesia. These are short Asian people who don't look as strongly Mongoloid as the Chinese. They kind of look like the Filipinos, maybe somewhat Japanese, but these people are called classical Mongoloid, as opposed to the true Mongoloids who were the Chinese people. We know in the sense that the Dravidians who founded the Shang dynasty were called Li Qiang or Black Qiang. The Shang civilization was born on the Pacific seaboard. This view is supported by the fact that such Shang innovations as Hongtu, or pounded earth structures, turtle shells, tomb constructions, bone carvings, and jade originated along the Pacific seaboard. In addition, the southern Nao bronzes and Shang bronzes are identical. This, along with the blackbird myths associated with the Shang, which are also found on the coast, indicate analogy. When the Shang joined out, the Xin Li lived there. Since that the Xin Yi, or the first rulers of Shang, were also developed a great culture, and this culture was very important. But we know also that people who founded the Shang civilization, they were Dravidian speakers, and what they wanted to do was they wanted to make sure that while they were, in a sense, creating the civilization, that they also maintained a close relationship with the other Kushite people that lived in other parts of the world, especially those people who lived in ancient Nubia and also the Indus Valley. And what you have to understand is that often when you read many history books, they make it appear as though the people of ancient China and the people in Egypt and the people in the Indus Valley, that they were all separated. No. When you look at the archaeology, you see what's called similar ideological ideas. And when we talk about ideological ideas, we're talking about the fact that you'll find that many of these people have shared pottery and things like that. Okay, it's 9:30. We're going to take a minute, take a break, and then we'll be coming right back. Again, I'm your host, Dr. Clyde Albert Winters. Again, for details on upcoming episodes of the African History Notebook, visit the website http://omec98.net/historynotes3HCM. Again, it's omec98.net/historynotes3HCM. You can purchase a copy of my books by visiting my website, and my books are basically published by Lulu.com, which is on the internet. Okay, to summarize, it's very important to remember that when we think about the blacks of China, in the Chinese literature, the blacks were called Li Min, which means black people, Kun Lung, Xian, Yang, Yi, and Yue. Okay, the Xia and the Shang dynasties were blacks. These blacks were called Yue, Jiang. The modern Chinese are descendants of a people called the Jie. Okay, when we think about these people, we come to how did these people move into Southeast Asia. Again, as I told you, first we have the Mongoloid, or the classical Mongoloid people, the type that's represented by Filipinos and Indonesians, the Vietnamese, and things like that. We see them coming into Shang, China, and they conquered the Dravidian-speaking people. And once they conquered the Dravidian people, what they did, in a sense, is that they began to dominate the culture, and they moved the capital of Shang to Anyang. Once these black people were conquered, many of the Kushites, the Dravidian-speaking people, the Mandi-speaking people, what they did is that they left parts of North China, and then they began to migrate into the southern parts of China, especially the Yunnan provinces. Those black people who did migrate out of China, once the Zhao took over, a very terrible thing happened, because, see, the Zhao, they used to use the black people. They used to use the black people for sacrifices. So every time the Zhao, or the Hua people, contemporary Chinese, every time they had an event, what they did is that they would sacrifice some of these Liqiang people. And when they sacrificed them, they would usually cut their head off, bury them, and things like that. So we find that many of these people were, sacrificed by the Chinese parties. The early Southern Chinese were predominantly of Yuek origin. The Yuek were probably the first settlers of Melanesia. In Melanesia, they developed a distinctive pottery style. Okay, and it's very important, in a sense, to understand that the skeletons in Southeast Asia and southern China, the skeletons in Southeast Asia and southern China, these skeletons are all of African people. Okay, although there were some Negrito people. When I talk about Negrito people, again, I'm talking about the Anu, which would be the Twa, or the Pygmy people. Most of them lived in southern China also. We find, in a sense, that much of the archaeology in southern China is related to the Southeast Asian pattern, with numerous finds of chip stone of type found in Sichuan, Guangxi, and Yunnan. Yunnan is one of the largest southern provinces of China, and this is where many of the black people fled as they were being pushed from the north. We find, in a sense, that the earliest people in southern China, these Yuek people, they had a very interesting civilization. And what's so important about these people is that they were known as great shipbuilders. In fact, in the Chinese records, we find that these Yuek people, or these people that lived in Southeast China, they made boats, as big as a football field, longer. And these boats, in a sense, were very important. And it was important because of the fact that they were able, in a sense, to trade. And this is one of the reasons why we find this expansion of African people from the mainland onto the islands in southern China. The southern Chinese civilizations indicate that the people were organized into specialized corporations. When I talk about a corporation, I'm talking about, in a sense, a clan. And as you know, in African civilizations or African societies, people who belong to various clans, they, in a sense, practice certain arts. And by practicing these arts, they're able, in a sense, to carry on various functions of society. The Southerners in southern China knew of iron, but they preferred to work with bronze and made stone plows and arrows. The plows were similar to the North Chinese iron plows. And considering the early appearance of agriculture in the South and the antiquity of the southern plow, this type of plow became very, very important. When we think about, in a sense, the Southeast Asian civilizations, many scholars believe that these cultures were begun, again, by Dravidian immigrants from India. Although this is their opinion, although there were Dravidian speakers who may have found many of the Southeast Asian civilizations, they didn't come from India, they came from China. Sir Bradwell used historical and archaeological evidence to show this Indian colonization, and what he did is that he tried to, in a sense, show that because of the fact that these people had many artifacts, irons, arrowheads that were also used in India, he assumed that they came from India, but they didn't. We find, in a sense, that as these Dravidians in Yunnan, what happened, in a sense, that as they were being pushed further and further out of China, we find, in a sense, that they began to develop various civilizations in the Yunnan province. Some of these civilizations began around what's called Lake Dian. In the Yunnan province, we find in a sense that what they basically did was they built 3 or 4 civilizations before they migrated into Southeast Asia. The basic civilization of the people who lived in Yunnan province in China and also carried over into Southeast Asia was a civilization that we call the Dongsung. The Dongsung civilization is a civilization that originated in Yunnan, and Dongsung is known by its unique bronzes. And these bronzes have been found in burials in Annan, Sichuan, and even near Lake Dian. In addition to the Yunnan sites of Shijiazhou, Jiangxi, and Lijiangxiang, we also find, in a sense, a lot of Dongsung material in the Gulf of Tonkin, and the Gulf of Tonkin is in Vietnam. The Dongsung cultivars encouraged the migration of the second wave of classical Mongoloids from Indonesia to Polynesia. This group probably began to occupy Polynesia about 200 BC. The Dongsung culture existed between 800 and 111 BC. These were black people. These people, in a sense, also had an influence in Yunnan during this period. They had another civilization that was called Yue Wu and Ba Shu. The Yue Wu states are part of the geometric and pottery cultures of South China. The Yue Wu Empire was conquered by the Chinese king Wei Wang of the Shu state. This culture extended from the South China Sea to Taiwan. The Ba Shu state was established in the southwest in Sichuan and in the Dian state of Yunnan. The people of Ba were referred to as Southern Man. Again, in a sense, man was a term that was used for black people, but man was also a very particular term, because when you read in Chinese literature about man, the term man is usually associated with pygmy groups or the Anu people. So we can assume that the Ba Shu state was a state that was dominated by the Twa people. The people of Ba, in a sense, were referred to as Southern Man. They represent the ancestors of the Baian, Puman, and Wuman. The Shu people were Manding, and some of them were Manding and Dravidian speakers, but most of them would have been Anu. The Ba Shu made ordinary earthen pit graves and bowed coffins. They worked in bronze and had their own writing. The artifacts from Da Puna resemble the bronzes from Lake Dian, the center of Dongshan. Yunnan was also the homeland of Chinese bronze drums. So again, we see this relationship. The civilization of China was founded by blacks. Their arts was founded by blacks. Their religion was founded by blacks. And even their bronzes were founded by black people. But again, in a sense, many Chinese are chauvinists. And what you find is that these Chinese refuse to admit the influence of black people in China. In fact, they try to even deny their African heritage, and they're able to do that mainly because of the fact is that many geneticists or archaeogeneticists, what they do is that they find genes among people. Often these genes go back to African groups, but what they do is that they change the name of the gene. So, and they'll give the gene a different nomenclature to make it appear as though these people aren't related to African people. But as we know, from the monogenetic theory, or the theory that man originated in Africa, all of these people would, in a sense, have black genes. But what makes it even more important is that some of them would have an abundance of black genes, which would show a recent origin. Okay, so again, we can talk about the fact that the earliest civilizations in China were built by black people. We find that the earliest civilizations also in Southeast Asia, the Cambodia, the Cham, all these civilizations were founded by black people. And many of the, you find that many of the pyramids in those areas, which would be called temples, but you'll find in a sense that many of these buildings are still based on the principle of the African pyramid. The only thing is that they're just made, in a sense, a little bit different. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to open up for questions, and you can ask questions about tonight's show, dealing with ancient blacks in ancient China and Southeast Asia, or you can ask any question related to some of the previous shows we had. Are there any people on the line?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Haru. How are you again, Doctor?
Fine, and you?
I am totally excited about your topic. I am absolutely ecstatic. I mean, this is an awful lot of information that you're sharing, and I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry I have to use a lot of Chinese terms, but hopefully people, when they hear them, they can maybe try to transcribe them. They can look on the internet and find out further information.
Yes. Well, I'd like to ask two things. I want to ask something of you. Since you're coming back next week, if when you come back next week, can you, I know you're speaking on a different topic, but can we get a list of the books that we can consult for the language and some of the writers that you refer to? Because what I'd like to do,